Hey, what's going on, people? Knowledge here. Before I get into my commentary, I want to say thank you to those who sent their condolences in regards to my last video. It's a real mental transition when you lose someone like, your father or your mother. So, I do thank everybody who sent their condolences, whether it was on Facebook, YouTube, or you guys who send me personal messages. I greatly appreciate it. But, there's been another mass shooting in Florida. And, it seems like this happens over and over and over, and nobody's really getting to the root of what's really going on. Now, we all know, if you've been paying attention, those who, might be in your late 20s or your 30s or your 40s and up. We all know that this generation of kids are very soft. A lot of these kids, the minute somebody talk about them or the minute somebody tries to bully them, they want to pick up a gun and shoot up everybody in the damn school. So we all know that the culture has changed, and I think that comes from just the level of bitch assness that's out here. We kind of shelter children nowadays. We don't let them fall down, scrape their knee, and get themselves back up. It's like everybody wants to pamper these kids. You can't talk to your kids a certain way. You can't discipline your kids a certain way, or you're going to jail. So it's just created this this weak-minded, soft culture. And we saw it kind of bubbling up in the 90s when we had, certain incidents where kids would go to school, get a hold of these high-powered weapons and just start shooting everybody simply because they don't have friends, or because somebody, roasted them in class, or, somebody was bullying them. And, I'm not going to put my last name out there, but, I have a very unique last name, especially here in America. And, my last name was a running joke in school. And, I never thought about going home and, getting a gun or picking up a gun somewhere and coming back and shooting everybody. When, people would crack jokes on me, I would either embarrass you, crack jokes back on you, ignore you, or I ask you to read out loud, because nothing embarrasses somebody who, likes to pop shit a lot than you challenge them academically. So that was my whole thing. I'm a professional embarrasser. I'll embarrass you if you tip me to that limit. But my point is that I never, got the urge to go and pick up a gun or anything like that. If anything, the most it'll lead to is, maybe us fighting. I didn't have no issue with that. But it's a real gun control problem here in this country. Nobody's talking about the real issue. You got these schools out here who have these children in these schools with mental issues, and they have them around general population, and they keep these kids stored in the school because they want extra school funding. You know anything about the school system, any kid that is in special education, or whether you have a physical disability or you have a mental disorder, the school gets extra funding for attending to that student. So you have a lot of these schools out here who, the minute you have a student that might have failed math, or, is failing a certain amount of classes or whatever, they don't directly go to, okay, maybe it's the way this kid learns, because we all know, if you pay attention, that, children learn differently. Some children learn by seeing things. Some children learn by reading. Some children learn by actually doing certain projects physically, and so on and so on. Everybody learns different. But instead of them going to possibly the way this child is being taught, or possibly them, getting after school tutoring, or figuring out what the problem is as to why this kid is having the issue academically, the first thing they'll do, they'll say, oh, we need to put this kid in special ed. And the reason they do that is because they get kicked back, and the school gets funding for every student that has a mental issue, or every student that is in special education. So there's this big push, especially from those who are at the, the top of the totem pole, to have these children there to get extra money. And instead of them saying, we need to think about everybody in the school. We know this particular student has a mental issue. Why don't we send them to a certain type of school that is strictly for kids who have a mental disorder? Or why don't, us as taxpayers come together and we say, okay, well, we're going to take some of those tax those tax revenues that we're contributing every time we get a check, you know, whether you like it or not. And we want the government to start creating schools for mentally challenged kids, those who might be dealing with depression or, you know, got things going on at home, or just, you know, were born with certain mental disorders. Why don't we build certain schools so that we have the security, we have the protection, and we have the awareness of what could possibly happen if this child goes off on the deep end? But no, they don't think about shit like that. That's too much like right. So what they'll do is they'll have these kids lounging around, you know, everyday ordinary kids. Somebody starts talking about them, you know, they have something going on in their personal life, and they come to school and they blow everybody away. And now you got kids who are losing their lives off of the simple fact of something that could have been prevented. And nobody really wants to address the core issues. Another issue that, you know, I think us as, you know, Americans need to start really looking into is, you know, how are these people getting a hold of these high powered weapons? You know, why does a regular civilian need an AK-47? Why do you need a machine gun or certain, you know, military style weapons lounging in your home? I don't give a damn if you like hunting or whether you keeping it in your home for protection. Why do you need those type of weapons? And I'm not against, you know, people bearing arms. Hell, I got a gun myself, because in today's time, you do have to protect yourself. You have to protect your family. And if someone intrudes into your home and they put you or your family's lives in jeopardy, you have to do what you have to do. So I'm not against civilians, you know, bearing arms, but I am against civilians having high power weapons, because you really have to question yourself about why these certain individuals get these type of guns. And, you know, we know there's people out there that, you know, just like the styles, or they like the, you know, the certain type of feel that certain guns have. You got guys or women that might have been in the military. So, you know, they're amped up and they're geeked up about having those military style weapons, because that's what they used when, you know, they were serving. So there's different reasons, but you have to really ask yourself why these people need these type of weapons. And a lot of times it's with bad intentions. These guns are getting into the hands of people who don't deserve to have weapons. And then they're not locking them up. You know, they're showing little Timmy on the weekend, you know, about a new gun they got. And then Timmy gets mad, knows where the gun is, picks the gun up, goes to school and shoots everybody. So, you know, I mean, me looking at this, I think we really need to stop letting just regular everyday people have firearms. We need to deeply investigate who owns a gun. I don't mean you go to some class and, you know, you take a couple of classes or whatever, and now you're a gun owner. We need to really get in tune and really investigate the people who are getting a hold of these guns. Because if you try to do anything with the government, whether it's, you know, you want to be a police officer, you want to serve in the military, or, you know, anything that involves the government, they're going to do a deep, extensive background check on you. I mean, some of these people, they go all the way back. You know, I've applied, you know, actually I used to work for the government a couple of years ago, you know, a little small gig I had, but hell, they went all the way back to when I was in elementary and looked at my background. So, see, the government only cares when they feel like it's going to affect them, when it affects their bottom line, when it affects the brand of the government, because believe it or not, the government does have a brand. When it affects, they feel like it might affect the integrity of the government. That's when they're going to do the extensive things they need to do to protect the people and protect themselves. But see, they don't do that when it comes to everyday people. They just let things go along until something like, you know, a school shooting happens, and then now everybody wants to boo-hoo and cry on the news. Well, shit, this has been going on for years. And I was reading today, just this year, there's been 18 school shootings. So, I mean, how many times does this have to happen? How long does it has to go on before we realize that certain policies and different tactics need to be put in place? You know, this is how a lot of those guns are getting in certain, you know, black communities. You know, we're not bringing that over here. It's these people outside the country who are bringing that stuff over here, whether we're talking about drugs, whether we're talking about guns. et cetera, et cetera. They're bringing that shit over here. We don't have planes and boats to get over there. And even if we did, you have somebody on our ass before we even get 2 steps out of our house. So, it's like nobody's really talking about the core and the root of the issue. And the root is that we don't need regular everyday people with these type of weapons. Everyday people do not deserve to have weapons. We need to get to the root of how a lot of this stuff is coming into the country. Now you got that, that orange head motherfucker Donald Trump that's talking about building a wall to keep immigrants out, but nobody's talking about how to keep the guns out, how to keep the drugs out. Why? Because they know they can easily lock up people of color, primary blacks, for those type of charges. So they want those things to come. And we'll give white folks a break if, they get caught with certain, narcotics or guns or whatever. Hell, you can go out here and kill a unarmed black teen, aka Trayvon Martin, and get away with it. But see, when they catch Jamal with a gun, or they catch, Keisha with narcotics, you going to jail. First offense. So it's just stuff, I think us as the black community have to think about, but then us as Americans, we have to think about coming to the table and really thinking about gun control and who gets these weapons in their hands, especially when we start to creep up on new elections, when we start to creep up on local elections. Because every time we look up, the media is talking about, oh, yeah, this is what's going on in the black community. This is what's going on in Chicago, Detroit, or, Compton, or any other place where there's a high population of black folks. They're talking about how we're thugs and how we're shooting each other. They're blaming hip hop for every goddamn thing. But nobody's talking about these white kids shooting up the schools. And for my black YouTubers out there, the same way we come out and we talk about the things that are going on in our community, how, some of our young kids need to shape up and we need to stop doing certain things to us, call these damn white kids out too. Don't just call out our children. You call out these white kids too, because they are a big problem of what's going on in this country as well. But, we really got to put, a stop to this because, it's not just, I know a lot of people might say, okay, well, these are white kids doing this to other white kids. But you got to remember that a lot of these, because as quiet as it's kept, a lot of these middle class and, upper class areas, they have black kids who are attending these schools. So they are in harm's way as well. And I don't want to make it, as if, I'm putting, black kids above white kids or whatever like that. Because at the end of the day, these are all children and, nobody wants their child to lose their life. But we have to be honest about the overall situation. Stop watching Jamal and Keisha and start paying attention to Timmy and Melissa because they fucking up too.